Leadership requires you to be able to tolerate discomfort. I'm sorry, but if you have a low distress and discomfort tolerance, you're probably not built to be a leader.
This episode of No Permission Necessary is sponsored by Grassroot Recovery. Grassroot Recovery is a sober living and coaching program based in New York City that supports young adults who want recovery to feel real and livable, not just theoretical. It's owned and run by two brothers, and their work is deeply personal. Grassroot focuses on structure, accountability, and confidence in everyday sober life. Their approach is hands-on and highly individualized. They don't just create a plan and take a step back. They stay involved, show up consistently, and genuinely care about the people they work with. Recovery with Grassroot isn't only about staying sober. It's about building a life you actually want to lead. You can learn more about Grassroot Recovery at grassrootrecovery.com.
All right. Well, we have a packed schedule today for what we want to talk about, and I think it's a good topic for founders of every type of business, not just behavioral health, but it has that behavioral health lens because as a licensed therapist and you working in the field, we see how our nervous system affects how we lead, right?
Yeah.
And your business is always going to reflect your nervous system. I was just talking with Molly off camera before this. It's like the more people you lead, the more money is coming into your business, the more regulated you have to be. And so the challenges that I face oftentimes are my overreactions because I run hot, I run urgent, I want to fix things right now. And every problem is not a right now fixing issue. And that's my nervous system sometimes. Like I want what it feels like, oh, I have to fix this. I get like nervous or like this like energy of like, I'll feel better if it's fixed. It's like, sure. But in the meantime, we have to learn how to just like sit with it.
I know I had that experience this week. I was contracted with my team to do a pretty big kind of audit essentially on a center that had been struggling in a variety of different ways. And I was sitting in the board meeting discussing kind of all of the different elements that needed to be fine-tuned and altered and changed. And through that process, what happens is that there's typically a team that pre-exists. And although they are looking for change and excited for change and claim that they really want to change, there is this level of uncertainty that happens, especially around new leadership, new staff, new protocols, new changes. And I found myself very much in a damage control kind of nervous energy where I looked at all of the things that needed to be looked at. And what I really found myself doing was wanting to fix it for them. And what really needs to happen in those scenarios is that I'm putting out a layout that's going to help set them up for success, but that they need to really have the wherewithal to create that foundational structure for themselves. And what that really helps us to do is that they feel a part of the building process. If I come in and build it for someone else, yes, there's an appreciation. Yes, there might be some gratitude. There may be a level of connection, but it's not going to be the same connection as it was for the individual that's in that startup position. So that nervous energy, I think also is a little bit of a light switch flagging to say, why am I doing it for them? I can do it side by side with them. I can give suggestions, but they're looking to grow. So I think that nervous energy really is my body telling me or my mind that I'm misaligned. And I really shouldn't be operating in that way.
Well, let's get into these four different ways that the unhealed parts of us show up. And I have an idea of what part that is for you, but I'll let you name it as we go through these.
Wow. Jill's done her research, guys. I'm just looking at this outline as of like 3 minutes ago. So this is going to get spicy.
So basically in therapy talk, we talk about like parts of ourselves, right? And those parts are, things that come up in childhood, things that come up in different parts of our lives, right? And so there's this need for balance sometimes that we seek. And so if we feel dysregulated, sometimes I'll give an example, like sometimes we try to hyper control things or do things the way we want it to be done because that feels more safe for us, right? So that regulation comes down to like internal emotional safety.
Mm-hmm.
Although those protectors and those parts, as we get into other things, they actually turn out to be like like they end up holding us back or becoming misaligned, right? It's misaligned in like the bigger picture, right? So as we move towards being leaders, founders, helpers in this field, we have to look at that stuff, not from a shame-based way, but like we have to be aware and we have to it's about making a choice or going back and rectifying like, okay, this is where I misspoke or um I acted in a way that it's not how I want to show up, right? So the four different things we're going to talk about today: approval seeking, performing to belong, hyper independence and control, and the scarcity mindset and survival mode. I'm a combo between 1 and 3, I feel like, because I really want to be told I'm right. I really want to be told. It's weird. It's like not there's a part of me that wants validation, but it's more about being right for me. I don't know what that is.
I
But
agree with that, but I'm not sure that that's approval seeking.
no, I don't I think it's different because when I read
I think that still falls into hyper independence and control. Being right is control.
okay. So what do you think I
We
am?
tease that out. You're the same as me.
Yeah, okay. So just as we put it out there, like we're obviously not I mean, we're healed in some ways, but like not every way. We're always a work in progress over perfection. And so we're gonna walk through these
Hyper
a little bit.
Yes, hyper independence and control, which I love. Okay, let's start from the top though, approval seeking. Because I do know a lot of individuals, and I think this impacts people in a big way in their work environment, is approval seeking. And Joe, I'll let you take the lead, but I definitely have some examples that I can share that I've been in a position of how I need to basically curb my leadership style, supervision style, and or mentorship style to be able to pendulate with people who really do get stuck in approval seeking.
So, what this looks like in your business, some examples would be over explaining decisions to staff, to potential clients, to your current clients, difficulty with setting rates, raising your rates, boundaries around policies, enforcing policies with staff, or being wishy washy, like saying you did this policy and then maybe enforcing it inconsistently, saying yes to misaligned clients or opportunities or even staff and needing validation from peers, staff, and the internet. I will say, now that I read those examples, though, that was me. That was a lesson I kind of learned this year.
So I think that we all have these parts, right? So I think
Yes.
for me, when I'm feeling, I really found myself doing this a lot towards the tail end of my time at the inpatient unit, was kind of over explaining because I wanted to make sure that the staff felt supported through the transition. Whereas previously, I would just be like, this is what it is. And that was what they were used to. So I think that also made them feel, I just got caught in a situation with somebody like this yesterday. Over explaining, I think will make your team feel less secure and less confident
Yeah.
because it almost is this, again, kind of going back to that nervous energy. People can pick up on that and they're going to follow whatever energy you're putting out. So over explaining decisions, I definitely think that talking about financial resources, whether that comes to an employee asking for more money or raising your rates from a client perspective, there is a certain skill set that you must hold to be able to go into those conversations confidently. And that is something that I've had to spend a lot of time on with certain staff. I will say not everyone is cut out to have financial discussions. And I think you really need to assess, are you one of those people that feels comfortable having financial discussions with clients and or staff? And if you don't feel confident in having those discussions, that's a really great thing to bring to your supervisor and tease out. So for instance, when you're looking at a behavioral health organization, you probably have a good fraction of people from an admissions perspective and then a continuing care perspective that are comfortable talking about cost. The people in the middle of those two pillars, probably not so much. Your clinicians, maybe your nurses, maybe your digital marketers versus in-person business development representatives, right? Everybody has their own comfort level. And what I'll say is that if you really have to get clear with what skill set you carry, and it's okay if you don't want to have hard financial conversations, then probably being in an admissions role or even a business development role that I think a lot of people are attracted to probably isn't the right fit for you. Not to say you couldn't get there, but if you don't feel like you can confidently own a room talking about financial resources and not have your own bias going on, then you might be in a little bit of a bind performing in that role.
So where does that come from? It comes from growing up, people who got a lot of praise around their performance,
Mm,
some conditional, what they might feel as conditional love related to how they perform, how they show up.
yeah. I mean, I think that allowing individuals as they're growing up and shaping and shifting themselves into what they want to do, they need to have some sort of resilience and confidence. And so, really, the financial discussion, or even, let's take finances out of it for a second, even having a conversation with a client who is resistant to staying engaged in any sort of treatment process, right? Or an employee who is disgruntled in some way, shape, or form, rather than being avoidant and is seeking approval by saying, oh, yeah, we can meet like all these needs, right? We see this frequently. We can meet all these needs when really you can't, right? Addressing what you can acknowledge and what is not going to be possible and being able to have that hard conversation. I think this is such a missing link in our space because people get thrown into positions and they don't necessarily even know how to role play out hard conversations, whether that's with staff or clients. And it really ends up then falling on a couple of your strong kind of like warriors that get called in for these tough conversations all the time. And then that kind of builds this level of like ego around those individuals in the organization where pushing back on each individual that is in your business to try it, right? To try or ask for support and have two people in there. But I think what happens is that we like highlight these certain individuals, but really not pushing the others to get to a place where they can sit in a room and have a hard conversation.
Well, it disempowers those other people, and it almost creates that, like, that mother father, like, dynamic where, like, which parent to go to get the answer
Yes,
you want, and
happens
that
all the
that
time.
that plays out in organizations where, well, I know what this person's gonna say, they're gonna hold me accountable, so I'm gonna go to this one. And the cost to the business, if you're approval seeking, you're gonna be burnt out.
Hmm.
There's gonna be blurred boundaries. There's gonna be resentment. That's a big one we see with people that we work with. Like, they resent the fact that they're working hard, 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 and there's these other people, they're not doing their job because there's no accountability. You wanna be liked more than you want accountability.
Well, that's, gets into our next one, performing to belong. But I do think one other note to mention on approval seeking is that there's a lot of individuals that will come to Jill or I or other colleagues in our space and say, I want to open up my own business, right? Or I want to go out on my own, or I want to be in a management role. If
Do
you
you?
are, well, I
Do
think
you
what
though?
I think the biggest question to ask yourself is, do you feel comfortable hiring and firing? That probably should be your answer right there. I mean, hiring, everyone's like, yeah, of course, but firing, can you fire? And do you feel comfortable with it to a degree that you can sit in a room and have to
Yeah, it
terminate a
always sucks.
position?
It sucks,
Right.
but if it listen.
And can you talk about money? Because those are the 2 things that you have to do, in a leadership capacity, right? And I'm not just saying as a business owner, but as a manager, right? And so thinking about like a lot of those individuals coming to you and, needing more money or wanting to have those conversations or conversate about how to grow or if they want to move up into a leadership role or having to call them out if they've been not performing well in their role, right? So I think overall, yes, money, hire, fire, etc. Those are good examples, but the reality is it's kind of asking yourself, do you feel like you're able to have hard conversations in your life currently?
But I think it's more, those examples you give are like the pillars, but what I see more in the consistent supervision is holding people accountable to the small things, because how you do anything is how you do everything.
Sure,
Are you
sure.
pushing the boundaries on, what your standards are, what your job performance looks like? Like, if you're lacking in that, are we pointing it out? Are we shying away from that conversation because we don't want to upset you? You have other things going on in your life. So,
Well, that
I
goes back
think,
to a supervision
yeah.
talk we could
So
have. Yeah.
So I think you don't need to have consensus with all your staff or even your clients to be ethical
Mhm.
or make the right decisions, right?
Mhm.
Approval does not equal alignment, and leadership requires you to be able to tolerate discomfort. I'm sorry, but if you have a low distress and discomfort tolerance, you're probably not built to be a leader. And you know what? Now that I'm saying that out loud, going back to one of the lessons I learned, it's like I really tried hard throughout my career. There's a few key people I can think of that I tried to push into leadership positions. They did not have the ability to tolerate discomfort or have hard conversations. And that should have been the signal right there that they weren't ready or were never going to be
Well, we've always, we're always able to see that
in
writings on the
hindsight.
wall. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so performing to belong. What's that look like?
Right when you said it, I think that where it takes me back to is like a younger version of me. Performing to belong probably looked like for me earlier on in my career is connecting with people because I wanted to kind of be a part of rather than it was going to serve the business, their business or mine. I think we see that a lot in the kind of B2B space, maybe hanging out with individuals because it feels friendly and comfortable, but doesn't necessarily push you on your skill set and your ability to grow your business. I think that performing to belong for a lot of individuals who have gotten into behavioral health come from a place of most, I wouldn't say all, but a good percentage of people came from a place that they struggled to belong in a lot of ways and used outside illicit substances and alcohol to soothe that and then found a life of recovery, but still didn't know where they fit. I think, performing to belong is such a larger topic, I think, as a whole, way outside of our space and pretty much anywhere that you see in in our current society, whether that's kids, teenagers, adults, but as it pertains to this conversation, really curating yourself to a version of yourself that maybe isn't authentic.
I think of the chameleon. I'm just thinking like you're the chameleon. You're the person that whenever there's a new thing, you're offering that service. Whenever, like, you're not really looking at like, what's my skill set? What feels aligned for me? You're just going by like what everyone else wants from you. And you're saying, yes, yes, yes.
Well, I think that's also part of the problem in our space is that we don't really supervise individuals in a way that helps them understand where they do belong. So I think it's a disservice on the leadership side for the people coming up through the ranks, right? And I'll say that I don't feel like I really had the oversight to kind of figure out where I was supposed to be. There was a lot of skinning my knees, but I think that it was helpful. It just probably took me a longer time to find where my skill set really was shining. And so all that to say, I think performing to belong is really kind of, yeah, chasing the next shiny thing, just not maybe overselling in a way, not really being authentic to why you believe in what you're doing, right? Having like a stronger, like, I think what shines more is the belief in what you're doing rather than all the new things that your company may be offering.
The cost here would be exhaustion, just kind of like also identity confusion, like not really being consistent in your branding, knowing who you are, people being confused. Like, I feel like we know people in the field. It's like, what does this person do? What are they doing? It's a valid question sometimes.
Regularly.
And
I just saw that not that
if
long
I'm
ago.
confused, then you're probably confused.
Yeah.
Inconsistent
Yeah.
messaging, teams who don't know the real you. Like, I think that's very dysregulating for the team and your business. If we're constantly switching gears and we don't know that, we always talk about mission and vision. If our mission seems to be switching every month because we're doing a new thing or a new service, or that's dysregulating to the team. And so, as we talked about this, like performing to belong, I am very comfortable not belonging apparently, because this is actually not me. I think what's going through my mind as I say is like, I say no to more opportunities than I say yes to at this point because they're not aligned. They don't make sense for me, whether it's turning away clients, whether it's turning on or down opportunities. It's like, that's just not what I do right now. That is more of a distraction. I feel like this performing to belong in certain spaces too, because there's the business leader space, there's your business space amongst your employees, which to be fair, you don't always belong there in those conversations. You're There's a power differential, so you're not one of the staff in a lot
Mhm.
of ways.
Yeah. But I also think that that took time, right? Like, there was a time in your life where performing to belong existed for you.
I worked 3 jobs and went to school at one time, okay?
Yeah.
So it's actually funny because I'm doing this application for something and I have to do a background check, which as a business owner, I don't do background checks a lot, right? But I was like, "Ooh, by the way, something might pop on there," right? And so which is something that I can't get rid of. It's something from my past life, whatever. I have no shame around it, but, like, if this was 10 or 12 years ago, like, I would feel the need to that's why I overperformed because I didn't think I belonged in the professional space because of my history, because of my past.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so again, those unhealed parts, but that's what I'm saying, that's a healed part of me. I don't feel that anymore. I'm like, "Nah, I'm past that." So I think
Well, I think that's good to point out. And how does one get there? One gets there through doing their own work, through talking about that, by putting
mentorship.
yeah.
People who mentor you, that build the confidence in you, that tell you and reflect back to you how people other people see you. Because those unhealed parts of us, if we're not doing the work, like we don't always see ourselves the way other people do. And I think I had some really key people
If we
throughout
ever do, honestly.
I had some really key people throughout my life that really I listened to this message about this morning that really built me up and reflected back to me, you know, how others see me, how God sees me, right? Like how the objective thing because our subjective, we always have so many flaws that we point out about ourselves, you know. All right, this is our bread and butter right here.
Skip over this one and do it mine.
Okay. Okay. We're going to do it out of order. Scarcity mindset, survival mode.
So that's really what we're talking about probably early. I'm going to bring you guys back. Okay. Early on, not having money, but living paycheck to paycheck. If that had been your experience, it definitely was mine. Kind of having to balance like what I could pay for this week versus next really kind of put me in a position of this scarcity mindset and survival mode naturally. Like, where's the next paycheck. So fear based decisions, potentially hoarding opportunities, underinvesting in myself, kind of dancing around, feeling like I could keep this job and then maybe I put my, dip my toe in this other area to try to build up this other side, side position or whatever I was doing. But what really my nervous system and my mind was always focused on was, am I going to survive? Right? Like those early stages of coming out of addiction and then moving into having to try to sustain myself financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all those areas. It's a big ask, right? When you have been completely used to basically just surviving, moment to moment, living in this, body and on this planet. And so when it comes to fast forward, that was my initial kind of experience with scarcity mindset and survival mode. So as like time progressed, I don't know if I have as much experience to share on this because there was this level of kind of trust, faith in a bigger plan. I think we're really lucky. And I know I'm really grateful to be able to have that kind of mindset because that is really what you work towards in the recovery space. But of course, I've had financial insecurity at times, but for the better part of the last, you know, decade or so, or beyond, that hasn't really been something that's on the forefront. I've always kind of led with if I do the next right thing is going to work out.
Totally.
So I don't necessarily struggle so much with that, but I do know that there is sometimes where the overworking, even when things are fine, that kind of energy will come up. And I think that's more to just see how hard I can push myself. But I'm probably looking at this layout, it probably comes from like that old survival mode, like not feeling like I could cancel on someone or feeling like I need to overschedule or overpack.
So I actually see this a lot in conversation with practice owners in our field. I think some of it comes from financial trauma that they have, instability in their past, periods where it really is survival. I also
Uh-huh.
think there's this collective energy of there's not enough. I think there's a collective scarcity mindset around amongst therapists who are also business owners. And I think a lot of that comes from not knowing your numbers, not knowing how to budget, not knowing how to set salaries according to that budget, and not like some of it is just the inexperience business wise of getting to know your finances. What I've learned is that there is a lot of avoidance amongst people in general
Uh-huh.
More shockingly for me, business owners, they don't know their numbers. How do you not know your numbers? I mean,
Mm,
if you're going to avoid that because, I don't wanna look at that, then you're never gonna know that when you have
yeah,
enough.
sure,
Right?
sure.
And so that kind of leads to the short-term thinking, I always have to have more. I mean, I can think of a couple people that they're always calling me with, "What do you think about this? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna, can we just pause? Maybe you just had a big win. Maybe you just went through a really big period where you were pushing hard. And can we just take a step back and rest before we like are always in this like urgent have to do more?" And some of that, or I have to take the work as it's given to me because I'm not going to get more. I feel like on the flip side of that, an abundance mindset is like you said, if I do the next right thing, the next right thing's going to happen. What's meant for me is going to come no matter what I do or don't do, like as long as I stay open to those opportunities. And my experience has been that's been the case. I
Same.
I have had to work on, and this is something the past 2 years, I can look at the hoarding of opportunities, finances, under investing in myself, saying like, we don't have enough because I've always felt like I had a late start in life, which, I got sober at 24. I don't think I had any savings until my 30s, probably. Right. Like, and
Right.
I mean, so I started late compared to
Yeah,
other people.
yeah.
But the older I get and the more people I talk to, I'm not actually late. Like, that's the actual reality.
I think that's the whole idea that, that mindset of when you get sober young too, like, well, what am I going to do at my wedding? When you don't even have a boyfriend, like, how am I going to get through my wedding sober? What am I going to do with my career? How am I going to pay my rent? Like, it's that circuitry. It's still there. It's just subdued in a lot of ways because you take different actions to, again, kind of raise your purpose and passion in other ways and
Yeah,
leave that fear driven mindset kind of to the side. But it can still crop up. I mean, really, where it crops up essentially is.
the control.
Is in our control.
But I just wanna make one last point about scarcity mindset because I bet you there are people listening, like, of course, Jill and Molly don't have a scarcity mindset. They got money or they got successful businesses or they time out, because I can tell you that there are billionaires, many of them, who are the most miserable people because they operate out of a scarcity mindset. Like, there's never enough. And I just
Yes.
think that scarcity versus abundance has nothing to do with how much you have. It really doesn't at the end
And
of the day.
also, if anyone does know us and has heard earlier episodes of the podcast, we had negative things.
Negative.
We were
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
unhoused. Okay. So we can talk about that a little further on a follow-up podcast if anybody wants to hear. Maybe we'll do like a Q&A. That would be fun.
Look up that definition, unhoused.
Unhoused.
Okay. Which leads us to the last section is hyperdependence and control, which is
Well,
probably that
that's
is
why.
yeah,
Oh, okay. So we're done.
I'll just do it myself. I don't need to have anybody else do it for me.
I
I'm
wonder where
not
that
gonna
comes
del
from.
I'm gonna micromanage it because I do it best. I'm struggling to receive feedback, help, mentorship. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think we've both grown in these areas. What I do think happens is that for me, it just sometimes is easier to do it myself. I don't want to go through the struggle of teaching you how to do it,
Yeah.
having a missed expectation, of having it not done as good as I want it to be done, or XYZ. I don't want to
And
go through
this
the
is
struggle part of it.
right, but this is where if we really want to be in a position where we're able to have freedom, number one, this is the opposite of freedom, hyper independence and control, complete opposite. And even though it feels like it is freedom, right? And it can feel like that in the short term. But I think what I really notice about myself is that when I'm operating in that place, number one, I can't grow the business effectively because then I'm not delegating. I'm
You're
not
a
creating a proper infrastructure. I'm not
Yeah.
creating an effective mid-level management system. I'm not, creating effective protocols or policies to help things run more smoothly. Number two, it's just simply not sustainable. I think from a family systems perspective, it really doesn't offer people the ability to see you and make a mistake. That's including your children, that's including your extended family, your family of choice. So for me, I feel like when I'm in it, it's noticeable. When I'm not in it, it's even more noticeable. It is a work in progress daily for me. That's what I'll say. And it's something that I have done a lot of work on, and I still struggle with it.
Yeah, I this is one of the things I've been working on in supervision with middle management around not being the bottleneck, controlling certain things, losing control on other things, like where is that balance? I will say this is something that crops up in certain areas for me more than others. Like for instance, I am all about empowering my staff. Actually, I could give two examples this week of where I was like, I don't know if they're ready or what's going to come of this in terms of like the decision they're going to make. But I to one of my teams, I said to them like, listen, I want you to start running meetings this month. I don't know if they're ready, but I know
Mhm,
that I have to see what they can do, and we have to rip that band-aid off, right? Like
mm,
I'm going to give you this set of tasks. This is yours. It's 2026. This is yours moving forward. We're going to meet more frequently so I can support you if you have some trouble. But then we had this other in my other business, a pretty significant staffing issue. And I said, I'm going to do whatever you decide to do because the person came to me, what should we do? What do you
mhm,
want me to do? I gave zero opinion,
right.
which is hard for me. I'm going to support whatever you decide.
Look, I've been there. I think that that's really, really, really I will say that just now I'm probably getting a little bit better because I have people around me that I trust. I think the harder part is that as your business grows, you don't trust everyone to the same level. I think that's probably where some of the barrier is, right? So when I first started with the business that we've created over this past year, I mean, there was people who I didn't necessarily feel like were in the right seat, you know? So now that we have moved things around and found people to fill those right seats, then you start to feel like, okay, I can loosen the reins. So, it's a dance, but
Control is not always competence, though. And I think sometimes I have to take a step back because some of the things I fight for and I want control, I want it to be done right. I don't always know the right answer, but like sometimes when I dig my heels in, I have to take a step back and be like, why does this matter so much right now? Like, and usually, if I'm being honest with myself, there's a fear behind it. There's a fear behind it that something's going to fall through the cracks, that it all ends all with me. And the reality is that's not true.
right. Right.
And so I think as like a wrap up, everyone listening, like what parts of you run your business mostly when we're under stress? Because all of these four categories that we just talked about, like these parts aren't bad. These parts actually like are really helpful to us in a lot
Mhm,
of ways.
mhm.
And they keep us safe sometimes. They've kept us safe in the past. They maybe have even helped build your business. But what happens under stress is these parts come out in a negative way, in a way that is like under pressure and doesn't feel aligned.
Right.
So, what work do you have to do around that? Do you need to look for a mentor? Do you need to go to some sort of self-help group? Do you need to start maybe some therapy or some intensive work?
Yeah, and then what decisions are you avoiding because of it, right? So that's really, whether it is knowing that somebody's not in the right seat and needing to let them go, whether it's knowing that, switching things around, restructuring, where are you getting bottlenecked? Where are you bottlenecking yourself, essentially?
Yeah. So, permission slip?
I would say permission to call on someone for feedback, really, to reach out to someone for help. If some of these things are resonating with you and you're unsure of where to turn, I would say, yeah, permission to get curious about it, permission to ask another individual who maybe has more experience than you. I don't know. I think permission to raise the bar, I think is really what's kind of coming to me. Raise the bar and kind of who you're
And
surrounding
do the
yourself
work.
with and do the
And do
work.
the
Yeah.
work because the work isn't getting rid of these parts. These parts serve a purpose, but the work is not letting them run your company or your business or your life. That's where you're going to get into trouble.
But I would say if, want to share your experience or have some feedback on stories of how this has impacted your life, we'd love to hear about it. This is definitely a series that we could probably do a part two to. So give us a follow. As always, we love hearing feedback, any suggestions on topics, interact with our Instagram. Our website is live if you haven't checked that out. And then also, please give us a subscribe on YouTube, which will help have the podcast reach more people. We have exciting things coming here in 2026. And as always, we'll see you next Tuesday.
Peace.